Roar Like Thunder, one of my favorite Buck Cherry albums. So there we go. I have to kick it off Crypt Rick style, my style, which is a bit of rock and roll. I enjoy my music. I tell you guys that every week, though, so it's nothing new. I mean, why do I keep preaching to the choir? But anyways, we're gonna have an interesting conversation. I am really excited actually to bring my guest on here. First time actually being on this show. As I was saying at the start of this before I kicked in the music, I have had Darren on who has come and spoke to me about many things. I've also had Curtis Griffin on. We've got into some philosophy. So I want to welcome to the show for the first time, Jeffrey Phillips. How are you?
How's it going, man?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me on the show, or having us.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. We kind of been trying to make this happen for a while, so I'm glad that we finally did, and it's definitely been interesting. I'm learning about a lot of things, and so I wanted to have you on. I definitely been checking out a lot of your shows because you do a show on YouTube, VGT, and you talk about a lot of different things. Some of the things I brought up at the start of the show, you talk a lot about veganism and plant-based, and these are things I'm learning about, I'm very interested in. But you also have a very interesting story, Jeff, kind of learning a little bit about you. So maybe I would love, because since nobody may know who you are here, first time being here, I would love for you to kind of maybe, can you take us back to maybe when you were younger, growing up, kind of like your family, your life, like maybe start there.
Yeah, man. I was lucky to grow up in Southern California. Um, and I think about 15 years old, I moved up to Northern California to live with my dad on a sailboat. And he was a sea captain. And so I did a lot of boat deliveries and a lot of, I sailed from Alaska to Chile by the time I was 16
Wow.
years old with him. Just kind of living like almost like a funny like carny life, like literally living like a pirate life. Um, not like like pillaging and plundering, but just living on sailboats and stuff. It was kind of a cool way to grow up. And I got after I did the sailing stuff, I got really into music and the whole vegan straight edge thing that you were wanting to talk about, which
Yes.
we can get to later. And I think at about 20, 21 years old, I moved to Los Angeles, California, and did all the things that one would do in Hollywood as far as like being and a musician and modeling and goofy shit like that. Um, and started a band that got very big in the MySpace era in like the early 2000s, which is is an era very close to my heart. Very fun times during the early 2000s. Me and a bunch of my friends got famous doing music. I was friends with the dubstep artist Skrillex. He was a buddy of mine, Sonny Moore, growing up. Went on tour. I was doing a lot of stuff in music. And in my living in LA, I kind of always had activist guilt because I knew I was falling into, I was always an activist growing up. The vegan straight edge stuff, it's very much activism. And so, falling into the Hollywood scam, I always kind of had guilt about that and knew that at some point I'd, come back around and get back into activism again. So I did the whole crazy Hollywood rock star thing for about 15 years. And then the Ron Paul ran for president in 2008. And that kind of piqued my interest in politics again. And then by the time he ran in 2012, I was doing a lot of grassroots activism for him, big libertarian meetups and get-togethers. And I started doing YouTube videos just about kind of basic libertarian principles. And through doing that, I ended up working with lots of independent activists, Luke Radowski, Adam Kokesh, and kind of, getting access to bigger platforms. During that time, I found Mark Passio, and he kind of convinced me from going to being a minarchist libertarian to a full anarchist. And during around, a few years after that is when I finally couldn't deny that my principles weren't relevant to the animal kingdom, also the non-aggression principle, the golden rule, stuff like that. I couldn't really. I had someone call me out basically and be like, "Bro, this non-aggression thing, like that's very, like you're kind of fooling yourself if you think that only has to do with humans." And so I went vegan again, and ever since then I've just kind of been moving and shaking in the libertarian anarchist world. A lot of outward pointing over the last 10 years, a lot of blaming government or psychopaths or stuff for the world's problems. Mark, eventually, Ali and Mark and some of the friends who came on the show when I started it, the podcast when I started it, really brought me back around to Mark Passio's stuff. And through that, internal work and shadow work and, inward pointing and, starting with the most important thing is yourself when it comes to your principles. Agreed. Anyone videos on YouTube, talking about principles, but do those people actually live those principles in the real world? That's kind of where we're at now is doing the internal work, figuring out how to do shadow work. And then, kind of, we've gotten into a lot of Eastern stuff, over the years. You could kind of, if you watch our show, VGT Live, over the years, you kind of see the character arc of what we've learned along the way. And, kind of in real time, because our show is a pretty long format and our show is open and live for anyone to come up and talk at any time. It kind of keeps things transparent. So we've been doing the show. I think we're nearing 70 episodes. The show's about natural law. It started off as a vegan show, but it's not really so much. We can go a whole episode without saying the V word once. But it's all related to itself. Veganism is related to natural law and anarchism. Whether you talk about it or not. But the show's fun. It's gotten a little bit of growth over the years, but it's a very niche subject. Not many people are into natural law, and not many people are vegan. But yes, I appreciate you having me on the show.
Oh, for sure. And as I said, I think I say this so many times. I fear I repeat myself, but it's really important. Is that I think conversations need to happen, and I never want to get to a point where I'm not willing to have a conversation with somebody. And I think that sometimes I've always said, Jeffrey, that sometimes I catch lightning in a bottle when you have these conversations, and I try to really look at things that I have similar with people before I start pointing out the things that we have differences. Differences are so easy to point out. We all have them. But I find out when I have these conversations, I really start to find out that I have a lot of things in common with people, especially, with you. It was music. I heard you on your show talk about music, and it was really cool because I reached out to you, and some of the bands I was telling you about, you're like, oh yeah, I remember them, and I knew them and hung out with them, and I was like, geez, so I found that really interesting, your whole music career, and I'd like to talk about that as well. But I wanted to I remember bringing up to you, because I told you the first time that I heard about straight edge was from wrestling, to be honest, WWF wrestling and WWE, and that was with
CM Punk.
CM Punk, and I was like, what? Like in my school, that I never heard that. I never heard that term. Didn't even know what it was when he said it, and I was like, and so it made me look into it. I was like, what is straight edge? And then I started to learn about it. But maybe you could kind of, I really want to dive into these different things. So like straight edge and then plant based and then carnism. And these things all mean something,
Awesome.
I think, different to other people. And I want to kind of just clarify things and have this discussion. So can you kind of break down straight edge and what that
Yeah.
is and all of that?
So in the early 80s, late 70s and early 80s, some punk rock bands popped up in, that was during the time punk rock, became very big. Disco was fading out and punk rock was getting big and pop music and stuff like that. So, of that era, a band called Minor Threat popped up. And there was a band called Bad Brains who was also very revolutionary during this time. But Minor Threat had a song called Straight Edge, and the song lyrics are, I don't drink, I don't smoke. It had like some kind of loose, wouldn't call them rules, but kind of loose principles to something called straight edge. And so back in the day when you used to go to an all ages concerts, if they were selling booze there, if you were underage, they put a big X on your hand. So the person selling alcohol, would see, hey, you're underage.
That's
You
where
got a
it came
big X on
from.
your hand.
It's CM Punk,
So
right? He has the X's on his hands. I didn't know
correct,
that. I
correct.
didn't know that.
Yeah. So does Mike Patton these days, which is crazy. But anyway, um, so kids started putting X's on their hands and calling themselves straight edge. And when it started, it was very much like a um, very internal principles, like you don't abuse your body with drugs and alcohol, or high risk behavior, promiscuity, eating bad. There was kind of like loose rules to it, but it was mainly don't do drugs, smoke, or drink. And later on became veganism also. The music is awesome, hardcore music, vegan straight edge hardcore music. The music of that era is just still to this day. We still go to hardcore shows, and they're so much fun. A hardcore show, what happens at a hardcore show? The only way I could describe it culturally, it's basically like if you go to Africa and watch those dudes dance around in outfits and rain dance. It's a similar experience and a similar connection that hardcore kids have at hardcore shows. A hardcore show looks like no other concert you've ever seen in your life. The energy, the basically everyone in the front of the stage also sings. The singers. It's called "Giving Up the Mic." Basically everyone sings the song in the front, and everyone's It looks like a riot, but it's absolute balanced chaos, basically. It's pretty cool, but hardcore's a lot of fun. You just you take the circle pitting and all that stuff, and it's like up a couple notches from there. But hardcore over the years, a band called Earth Crisis showed up in the early 90s. This was the second wave of hardcore that came through. The first wave was in the 80s, and the second wave was 90s, and the 90s hardcore was more metal based than punk based, I'd say. And a band called Earth Crisis from Syracuse, New York popped up with an album called Destroy the Machines. And this album it's basically the animal rights activist Bible, basically. Destroy the Machines is about going to, like the Pacific Northwest and sabbing, which is sabotaging the lumber industry machinery, or releasing minks from a mink farm, or it's basically civil disobedience against what's wrong, against something that's obviously wrong. And so Earth Crisis kind of gave the second wind to the straight edge thing, and included veganism. And basically, it became where like kind of a thing where if you weren't vegan and you were straight edge, you weren't really straight edge anymore. And we all would we would do, you know, like you go to the concerts and there'd be all these booths with zines. I know Mark likes talking about zines and pamphlets about animal rights and animal, you know, what happens to people at animals at factory farms and what happens to people at factory farms. The people that work at these farms get PTSD and something called PITS, which is perpetrator-induced traumatic syndrome. People that work at factory farms, they incur a lot of damage working there, as well as the animals. But so the Earth Crisis thing was really cool. Allie and I actually got married this last year, and we had the singer of Earth Crisis officiate our wedding. We had the singer Carl, the singer of Earth Crisis, officiate our wedding in the parking lot of a place called Gilman Street, which is kind of the CBGBs of the West Coast. It was pretty fun. But yeah, so vegan straight edge it was kind of we got on in the 90s. During that time, veganism got really big. Animal rights activities went up a lot, and straight edge people were put on the Department of Justice counterterrorism list as a terrorist gang, because you know there's always some bad apples in the bunch, and the whole group will be, you know, in the early 90s it was very easy to be like, oh, this is a gang, you know, of these crazy animal guys, you know, and we're all tattooed and, you know, colorful looking people. So you could actually, America's Most Wanted did a hour-long thing on straight edge. You can find it on YouTube. We've showed it on our show before, but it was about me and my friends and, you know, the stuff we were getting into and the movement, because it was such a strange thing for back then, being like, oh, you guys are like, you know, really into the animal things, and you guys don't do drugs, and you don't smoke, and you don't drink. Like, it was a very interesting, different thing, kind of a counterculture type thing, and it's still around today. But we're in like the fourth wave of vegan straight edge now, with the new generation. It's this big throwback to the 90s. There's this band called Turnstile that is huge right now. One of the coolest bands that we know, a band called Drain. They're from Santa Cruz, where I actually grew up. They're huge right now. Awesome band. Definitely, if you're into Pantera, check out Drain.
I will.
If you're into who's Turnstile sound like? I don't even know. Turnstile's awesome. If you want to see a hardcore show live, watch some live Turnstile. They're awesome. They're headlining giant shows. It's the wildest thing for me because it was very much an underground thing when I was into it in the 90s, and now it's mainstream with like my son's generation, and it's just it's pretty wild. But vegan straight edge, vegan straight edge is basically natural law. Like, it's like all like Earth Crisis is like the natural law soundtrack. Like, it's all about keeping within your principles and doing less harm. And, you know, that's why Passio's stuff resonated so much to me, because I was like, oh, this is what I used to do when I was a kid. Like, this is, you know, the same set of principles. Here we are again 20 years later with the same set of principles. You know, it's you know, just like the natural law scene is kind of an accountability scene. Same thing for us back in the day with the vegan straight edge thing. Like, it was like, you know, very much us versus them. You know, we need to convince everyone to change, which the Mark Passio natural law thing is, you know, spreading the great work is the most important thing, and changing everyone else in the world and changing people's minds and smashing commies and stuff. This very dualism, you know, adversarial viewpoint on things, headspace of things. This like basically like, oh, the world sucks, so I gotta go fix it, and I gotta fix it really hard. Like I gotta really try a lot to fix the world, however way I can. Meanwhile, you waste your whole life and you don't get anything done, and you're kind of miserable because you aren't seeing any, like changing the world's not an easy thing, and if that's your goal, you're
Yeah.
gonna get disappointed.
Yeah, and that's the one thing I think I've even realized over the years, and you kind of brought this up when you were talking just a few minutes ago about this arc that you kind of see on your show of growth, and that's what's really interesting to me as well, because I'm something very similar is what I'm going through, and it's a real blessing to have an archive section where you can kind of go back. And I like to revisit some of my shows from 5 years ago to see where I was at and where I'm at now. And that was something I think we all go through that at the start. You learn some stuff and you're like, I gotta go tell everybody. Oh my God, and then I blasted people, and then I found out very quickly, Jeffrey, that this is not good. You mostly push people
Yeah.
away, and then I started to realize over the years what I've realized, and you do a video on your YouTube channel, 12 steps to shadow work, and I started to realize over the years, and it's become very clear to me that the work, and I say this so much on my show, anyone that listens all the time will know I say this, is that the work really begins on yourself, and this is where the most change has to happen. And I think this is a spot most people are most uncomfortable in, is once again really being honest with yourself and it's easy to point outward and blame everything on other people. And I think we do that, but when you start taking that finger of judgment and placing it where it belongs, is on yourself, is where I think the work happens. So I'm talking about shadow work a lot, and I'm still in this progress of falling short, but really trying to work on myself and understand who I am and who the real me is, and what's been put in my mind and over through propaganda and just all this social media stuff coming at people. It's kind of hard to get back to who you truly are at the core. And so I think it's a fascinating journey. And so very similar in that ways, I think we have our past shows that kind of show us this progression. And that's what I've learned, just is that, you feel this need to go change the world. The world's broken. Oh my God, like I got to fix it, and I got to fix everybody in it. And a lot of people miss the mark that they have to start. It starts really, I know this for a fact. The strong foundation starts within yourself. And that's the most important work, to be honest. And then it'll start to radiate out after. So very interesting. But I don't want to think I forgot about you, Ali. I would love for you to come on and say hello and introduce yourself if you want to tell people a little bit about yourself, because I don't want to think I've not forgot about you. So I would love to say hello and, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks. Hi, Rick. Thanks for having me tag on here. I feel bad. I'm like, I don't want to take up precious time. I'm so excited that you're finally able to have Jeffrey on. But yeah, gosh, like where to start, right?
Yeah.
I feel like I kind of had like a lifelong journey of like trying to peek behind the curtain, so to speak. And you guys kind of covered a lot of it, but my journey sort of has kind of gone around to a lot of research, information gathering, outward pointing, and really the past like 4 years really coming back to like the self work and really almost feeling like back to where I started, right? Like it's almost like I feel like my journey is kind of bringing me around to remembering some things I kind of understood as a kid maybe, but just kind of how that's relevant into like the greater context or the macro, just sort of like what is the work, right? What is this great work we're supposed to be doing? That's changed for me a lot, and coming together with Jeffrey and sort of producing content, and with VGT Live, and also I have my YouTube, which is Light Occult Revival. It's just sort of steered our content in that direction towards like the self work, and I'm just kind of through everything from sort of similar journey as Jeffrey, of sort of like coming from like the libertarian movement, super into the Ron Paul stuff, becoming an anarchist, through Mark Passio, him kind of helping me understand things, and then kind of just as a sort of like jumping board off from there, like I said, back to the self-work. Here we are, but yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, the self work is the thing. That's, as I was just saying to Jeffrey, is so important, and a step that I think a lot of people are missing. It's hard to call you out on your own shit and then be willing to work on it. And it's a constant journey for me. And I feel, I oftentimes think that old saying, take one step back forward, you feel like you take two back, because you have to constantly check in with yourself, because it's so easy to kind of slip off the path, which I think we all do. And then the courage, the part that's courage, is getting back on it and realizing that you even slipped off it. So it's this journey, and this, I love growth. It inspires me to learn and to hear people's stories, and to let people know that, you're not alone in this, like this struggle that we all internally have, and this trying to, I would hope, become a better person. And then, as I said, once you start to become a better person and you become, who you are, and you've done that work, which is continuous, it's never done. I fully understand that, but it starts to really radiate out, and it's interesting, and there's a lot to unpack. It's hard to do this in a 2-hour show. I may have to get you guys back, because there's so much I want to talk to Jeffrey and you about, because you guys cover a lot on your show. It's not, and you're right, it's not just all veganism, and you guys really talk a lot about shadow work and all these things that I love to talk about. And so I'm happy to have you both here to kind of just talk about some of these things, because I think when people hear these words like straight edge, plant-based, veganism, all these things, they all have these, they're just, maybe not fully clear. They have misunderstandings. So I would love to maybe get Jeffrey to talk a little bit about, because this is the term, this is, from what I understand, and please, Jeffrey, correct me at any point if I get things wrong or mixed up or whatever, but from what I understand, plant-based is a diet, is a way to eat, and veganism is a lifestyle. Is that correct?
Correct.
Break it down for us.
So veganism isn't really a diet. People think it's a diet, but it's actually a whole way of living where you don't take advantage of animals in any way whatsoever. You don't wear leather, you don't wear wool, you don't buy products that are tested on animals. There's a lot more to it than just someone who eats fake meat or not. Which most people, you ask them what veganism is, and they think it's a diet. Plant-based, while people who are vegan do eat, they don't eat. There's a reason why it's often mistaken for a diet, because the diet does have something to do with it. But plant-based is like the fad diet version of veganism. It's like, I'm eating veganism because I want to lose some weight, or I'm eating vegan because this, that, or the other. It's not, I'm vegan for the animals. It's a different thing. I'm vegan because of morals. It's, I'm vegan because I watched Game Changers and it's popular right now, and I'm going to try that out. And those people, plant-based dieters, don't usually last very long. They usually skip to the next fad diet when the next thing pops up. And so like a lot of plant-based dieters that fail will get, that's veganism failing, so it's kind of a touchy subject. Mm-hmm. So plant-based, most plant-based people, like, they won't look that deep into the ingredients. They might splurge and eat some chocolate cake, that has egg and milk in it, and they don't worry too much about it. Most vegans would never do that in a million years. So they're while they sound like they're the same thing, they are different things. Plant-based dieting versus veganism. It's kind of plant-based dieters are kind of half-ass vegans, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and see this is good to clarify things, because I think, like when I first heard veganism, that's kind of what you think about. Is I immediately think of like a vegetarian, somebody who's just eating plants and and stuff like that. And then when you learn more about veganism, I started to realize like this is really a thing where animals are in the forefront, and the exploitation of animals, which is definitely something I want to get into in the second hour. Um, it's what's interesting too to me is I remember hearing in one of your streams, because I've heard you say a few times that the most unhealthy you were was when you were vegan, and then the most healthy, which is where you're currently at now, you and Ali, is where you were most healthy. And I think that because you hear a lot of stories of people that go vegan and they were so sick and it was
Yeah.
just a total disaster. And so I'd like you to kind of talk about that, because at least because we got a break coming up, I got to keep it on the time. So we
Yeah,
got
yeah.
about 6 minutes now. So it's a lot to ask in that, but maybe you could just talk about the first
Yeah, I
part
got it.
of
I
at the
got you.
beginning of your learning about veganism, you were the most unhealthy, and maybe you could
Yeah,
kind of
so when
explain
I
why
was
that is.
16,
Yeah.
and obviously didn't have much life experience as far as taking care of myself or eating correctly, I went vegan, and I thought because I didn't eat at McDonald's every day that I was healthy. But in reality, I was living off. I would buy cases of vanilla soy milk, and my buddy was in the chat a couple months ago and reminded me that we used to eat tubs of red vines. And just
Okay.
soy products, like texture vegetable like there weren't many products available back then like there are now. I wasn't eating my veggies, I was just eating like whatever. I don't even, just a bunch of processed stuff, strictly processed basically, and like I was just really, really unhealthy. I was very skinny. I had gum issues. I had um, hemorrhoids. Like there were like lots of like you can if you eat too much of something, you could become allergic to it. And I think I had,
Sure.
I was upsetting my stomach with the amount of soy I was eating at the time, and just whatever. Like it's just not, if you don't know what you're doing and you don't actually spend time on it and use the trivium and all that fun stuff, you can absolutely do it wrong. And a lot of people, when they go vegan, they undereat. They don't eat enough. You have to eat more. You have to eat a little bit more when you're vegan. But most people will undereat, or they'll avoid carbs also, which is just crazy. Because there's so many weird diets around that people will just like pick and choose things, and they contradict each other. And no one, everyone's getting their health advice from podcasters and stuff.
Which is
So yeah,
crazy.
and then now it's completely different. Now,
Mhm.
eating a whole food plant based diet. It's not all, we definitely eat some processed food, but processed food, just because it's processed doesn't mean it's bad. There's a lot of uh, bad bad info about processed foods around. Obviously, there is bad processed foods, but it's not all bad. But we mostly eat fruits and vegetables and rice and legumes and cereals and oatmeal and bread. We eat as much as we want. We have a pretty active lifestyle. We ride bikes a lot, so we basically eat unlimited carbs, and we don't worry about sugar and stuff like that, because it's energy. It's pure human fuel. And yeah, I've been vegan a long time now. I went and got my blood work done. I had perfect panel. Not a single thing out amiss. Not that blood work is everything, but we do endurance events where we go out and ride 100 miles, ride bikes and stuff. And, I'm up there just as fast, if not faster, than other people that eat totally different diets than me. So it's definitely not slowing us down at all. But I haven't aged much in the last 10 years, like I can't really say that that's exactly from veganism, but if you take care of yourself and you eat right, and you exercise, you know, it's
Hey,
going to be
yeah.
good.
Yeah, well, no, it makes sense. You have to do things properly, and I'm glad that you kind of brought that up, because I think that that's probably in most cases that's what happens, is what you described, and I'm sure you've heard many stories and talked to many people who have had that, they go into it half-assed without really researching it, and which could be disaster for any diet. I mean, I don't even like the word diet, to be
Well, it's
honest.
not even like in their heart,
Right.
Like most vegans, we have animals that we're doing this for, so we go a little bit farther. We take a little bit more time because we're doing it for the animals, we're not just doing it to lose weight or to fit in because it's a fad right now. Like, we do it for the animals and because of the moral aspects of it.
Yeah, yeah.
So obviously, we care more.
Yeah, but the animal thing is really important. I want to get into that in the second hour. Definitely, we got a couple minutes before the break, and you bring up so many things that I want to cover and kind of touch on. And I'm going to do what I famously do, which ask some big question a minute before the break. I seem to do that a lot. So I really appreciate. Yeah, talk fast, but I appreciate you both coming on and having this discussion because I think it's an important discussion, and it really starts to. When you start getting into, and definitely in the second hour, when you get into the animal aspect of it now, this is where you start, these are where the tough questions start to come in. And, when you start to ask these serious questions, and I get it, many people are going to have different opinions on this. And as I was saying at the beginning, I am not trying to change anybody's minds on anything. I'm just here with Jeffrey and Ali to have a discussion and bring information forward to you guys. And you do what you want with it. You process it, live with it, and go from there. But I think the information is important, at least take in and examine, which is what I do. And this is the journey I'm on right now. It's an important conversation because I'm a big animal lover, huge animal lover, and God, I really am. So it's an important discussion to have, and I don't think, and I'll kind of end on this because I know the break is right there. I'll end on that. Please stick around, guys.
And now we're going to get back to your host.
Welcome back, everybody. As promised, we are back. Hour 2. We are in the crypt. We're having a great discussion with my first-time guest, Jeffrey Phillips. You can check out his YouTube channel. Just look under Jeffrey Phillips. He does a show, VGT Live, and plus other shows, too. He talks about shadow work. There's a 12-step video, basically on 12 steps to shadow work. Very good video. Check it out. Big on shadow work here. He's also joined with his wife, Ali. We are discussing a lot of things, a lot to cover in just a 2-hour period. We are getting into basically what straight edge is, which it was great to kind of learn a little bit about that. We're talking about plant-based. We're talking about veganism. And this is something that really ties in a lot to what I talk about with many guests and others subjects is natural law and this cause no harm. And this is kind of, for me, where metal meets bone, rubber meets the pavement, is when you start asking these tough questions. But I do want to say to you, Jeffrey, that I know you were big back in the Ron Paul era and stuff, and I kind of brought it up to you when we were chatting just on Messenger, and I was talking about David Crowley, and I know that he did a documentary, and I'm going to send you the link for it. Maybe you want to check it out, called Gray State, The Rise. And I saw people in there like Adam Kokesh, and there was a lot of other people in this kind of documentary that David Crowley put together. I've talked about the David Crowley case many times on this show, but just to give you an idea, and then I kind of looked to see if there's any interviews or videos with you and on YouTube, and there was one with you and Adam Kokesh and stuff. It was kind of neat just how, that's kind of why I brought it up to you, the whole David Crowley case, was because I think there's going to be a lot of names in this documentary, The Rise, that you know or hung out with.
I interviewed David before he passed.
What did you think? Wow, I didn't know that.
It was with when I was doing the podcast with Kokesh. We interviewed him. It was pretty gnarly.
It's a gnarly case. Yeah.
It was like internet, like it was a big story, coming from our circle,
Yeah. And I just thought it was interesting. I just remember that's why I messaged you. I was like, "Geez, do you know about this case and stuff?"
And I was like, "As a matter of fact, I do."
You were doing that with bands I was mentioning, and it was just really interesting. Like I said, the music thing is what really we first started talking about. We kind of changed music and stuff. So I'm so
music's
glad.
Fun.
it really is. It's my center. It's so important to me. Music is
Yeah.
always, it's just my thing. So I talk about it.
Yeah, Allie and I have bonded over music quite a bit since we've
It's
met.
amazing. Yeah. And I'm
Yeah.
even reaching out because I was definitely, everyone knows I'm a big rocker, metalhead, whatever you want to call me. But since I started playing drums, my music taste has drastically been altered in many ways. Now I'm listening to stuff I would have never listened to. Hip hop. I've had a lot of artists on here
Oh, yeah.
from even the Sound Path of Freedom. I've had Conrad on and some other artists
Shout
that
out to
weren't from the
Conrad.
Sound Path. Yeah, Conrad. I
I
love
know
Conrad.
he's listening.
Yeah, he was just on the show recently. Played exclusively a couple of his new songs, and that it was really interesting. So
He's a
this
real
whole
G.
for sure, man. Yeah, and I love the whole creativity aspect of music and art, and I think there's ways you
Yeah.
can incorporate natural law. But anyways, that was just kind of I wanted to bring that up about the activism because I know you were big back. You were saying, back in those days, and it was a
I
really
kept
different
busy.
time. You
Yeah.
definitely did. Yeah, you were doing it, and so I want to kind of talk. Like, I think now we got to get into the kind of the veganism thing, and this is where I want you to
Not
kind
so
of,
fun stuff.
yeah, where you want to take this because it does. I think it does really. This is where we talk about shadow work and we talk about natural law, and a lot of people know the buzzword natural law and stuff, but it really comes down to, you hear like don't cause harm to people and it's no harm principle. So I would like to, for you or Allie, if she wants to join in, by all means, Allie, you're more than welcome to give your thoughts on this, but I think a lot of people struggle with this. And so maybe you kind of touched on this, Jeffrey, that the damage, and I found this interesting, of people that work in these factory farms and slaughterhouses, the damage that happens not just to the animals, which is atrocious, but to them.
There's a massive, massive human toll in order to have animal agriculture. Working in animal agriculture is one of the physically most dangerous fields to be in, physically and mentally. We've watched on the podcast many times interviews with former slaughterhouse workers, former farmers, where they're completely, their whole life they have mental health problems because of it. Also, one of the bummers that happens also is that industry, they incentivize people coming out of prison and lower, like poor people into those jobs. When they open up a concentration camp, factory farm, same thing. Same thing. They've done studies where they'll open up one of these places in a community, and crime goes up overall across the board. Just having one in the neighborhood. Hell on earth only exists in war and in factory farms. It's pretty terrible stuff, and it's not only factory farms. It's people's farms at home. It's people that are off grid. The same terrible things happen to these animals. People like saying, "Oh yeah, like going to your local farmer is so much better than going to get your stuff at the store," but it's really not. And sometimes it's even worse on these home hobby farms because the people don't know what they're doing, and they don't know. I've seen videos on YouTube where people are like, "Oh, we're going to kill our whatever today," and they attempt it and they can't do it, and now you have this animal that's suffering because this person can't go through with killing the animal the correct way.
Experience.
Yeah, just a. And there's just a lot of cope going on about the whole animal thing, but there's people like, "Oh, I don't really care about animals," but there's environmental issues around these factory farms and the chemicals used in the plant agriculture that's for feed. Yeah, so we feed these numbers aren't right, but we feed 1 billion calories to a cow to get 1 million calories out of them. Right now, if we quit feeding all this food to animals, we'd be able to feed everyone in the world, and prices for food would plummet. All kinds of stuff, but we're we're giving all this food to these animals at a loss, because the cow has to poop, the cow has to fart, the cow has to have all these secretions come out of it, and that costs us calories that just go onto the floor. It's completely wasted. So economically, it's economically insane to raise an animal just to kill it up, to cut it up and eat it, because it costs so much money in land, medical costs, food, water, farmers' actual wages to have them to grow an animal. It costs a shitload of money. And thus our government subsidizes a massive amount of it. And without those government subsidies, no one would be eating meat. Only the elites, like it used to be back in the day, in like medieval times. It's always the gluttonous kings and stuff like that were the ones eating the more meat-based diet.
I'm glad you brought this up.
It doesn't make any sense for like libertarians or anarchists or anyone who's economically, to be like, oh, I'm against subsidies for everything but meat and dairy. It's kind of, it doesn't really make any sense. And people will say, oh, well, they subsidize the plant agriculture too. And they do, but it's in order to keep the animal feed cheap. It's corn and soy. It's stuff that it's specifically subsidized for plant food, for animal food.
And that's
our tax dollars into it.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that was where I was going to go next. Is that when you start to learn the subsidies and how how much money is granted to the farmers to keep this animal, to keep this going. I never knew that. You don't know what you don't know until you learn about it. And so
exactly.
When I heard you talking about that, I found that really interesting, because I never thought of it that way. I've heard you say and other people say that if the government wasn't heavily subsidizing the farmers and making this whole thing run, that meat would be so expensive. I've heard you even quote and say that you might get meat once a month. It just wouldn't be beneficial. And I think people that's interesting. I think people would find that interesting, not realizing that maybe you could talk more on that, how the government is propping this all up.
Carnivore diet libertarians really don't like hearing about that stuff. The fact that they're doubling down on the most subsidized food that we have access to. It's just like before I was vegan, I had a couple goats once, and in order to keep them alive, it cost a massive amount of money, especially to feed them organic feed, and feed them a healthy diet. It was absolutely ridiculous and not worth the milk that I was getting out of those goats, and that was my first oh wow, it's completely economically insane because it costs so much money. And like you were saying, it would be $300 a pound for this stuff. But and the thing is, the problem is that people love to get caught up in the health and oh, well, is it healthier? And when it's really, it's a moral argument. Veganism is a moral argument. It's not about economics or health, although we do have a lot in our favor in those two sectors. It is very much healthier across the board. 200 years of meta-science worldwide knows that a plant-based diet is healthier than eating a shitload of meat. And so, those are good things in our favor, but we can't get too caught in the weeds. I used to debate people about, all this stuff all the time, before I was really debating, the moral argument, because there are so many arguments for eating plant-based within these two sectors. But the most important thing is the moral. And, Tolstoy said that as long as we have slaughterhouses, we'll always have battlefields, and it's true. And like you were saying, you're an animal lover, and it's we come across this a lot where we're someone will just be like, man, I love my cat so much, but it's so hard to quit carnism because we've had it brainwashed into us since before we had a choice. You know, you didn't grow up vegetarian and then at 18 years old do the research and decide whether you're going to eat meat or not. It was forced on you when you're a kid by your parents who were more brainwashed than us, you know. I'd like to think.
Yeah, I would. I'm just trying to, like, I'm really listening, and
yeah, and like I'll debate guys, and they'll have the worst arguments because they don't have the facts that cause them to decide to eat either way. They just have these ideas that they repeat that are completely, fallacious. We only eat meat out of tradition. Sure, we are omnivores, but we were given the ability to eat meat as a emergency source of food. These days, we are no longer in an emergency, and but our government has artificially allowed this tradition to keep going and to spread to everyone, and it just hasn't gone away. But it's going away slowly. The dairy industry's taken a real big hit because of all the nut milks that have popped up on the scene, and I know a lot of people are eating less meat. And I know at our local grocery place, we live in a community we're probably the only vegans around, yet all the vegan food at the store sells out shockingly fast. So I think a lot of people understand that it's the healthy, more moral choice. Whether or not it's moral or not, whether or not the person knows it's a more moral choice, they know it's more healthy. But ultimately, it's all about the morality of it and how much karmic debt you want on your hands. Your karmic inventory is serious, and karma rears its head on carnists late in life in the form of medical problems and health problems. People don't really like identifying that. That when you're eating up to maybe 7 animals a day, throughout your day in your different meals, that shit builds up on your karmic inventory. And
well, I know for me, like I could never, like if you said to me I had to go slaughter a cow or even a chicken in my backyard, I could never do it. And if I was even forced to do it, it would wreck me. I just couldn't imagine. Like I know that about myself, and I'm very honest with myself. I could never do that, and it's very easy when it's already the bloody work is done and it's packaged nicely on the shelf. But I always say to people, like, if you had to, and I'm not making an argument either way. This is a discussion. Do with it what you want. I'm not here to for any other reason for the discussion, but I can speak for me, and I know I wouldn't be able to do that. And I can even think back to when I was in, like, a lot younger, like probably like 10 to 14. I kind of got into small game hunting. Nothing major. I wasn't killing deer or anything, but I would do and I only killed a few animals in my life, and I still to this day. That bothers me, and I'm not even joking.
Small game are cute, man. The little animals are the cutest ones.
I know, and I can't. I think back to that. I really do, and I'm like, God, I feel so shitty.
Yeah.
That I took this animal's life, and I can't even blame it for food. I can't say, I was doing it for food. No, it was for all the wrong reasons, and so I live with that.
You're a human being, bro. Like, everyone has those feelings. Everyone has that inside of them, whether or not they're willing to admit it or not.
Yeah, and so I know I couldn't do this. I couldn't be the person doing it in a survival. And people are like, well, what if you were starving and it was a survival situation? Well, that's different, but we're not there yet. So that's a totally different thing. If you're starving and you got to feed yourself or your family, okay, then I get it. But while there's still food on the shelves and there's information out there, I think that it's kind of not a great argument at this point. I'm here for the discussion. I wanted to ask you though, because I remember you saying that, for when you did go to Hollywood and you got back into the band scene and stuff, you fell off of your veganism and you went back,
Yep.
basically sucked into the carnism. And you said, yeah, I remember I kind of giggled when you said, I was shredded. I looked great, but I couldn't even run around the corner without being out of breath and stuff. And I think that's important.
Yeah.
Like, so
Yeah, people equate having muscles to being healthy, and that's
they sure do.
absolutely not true, And a lot of, and I've like you've said, I've been through periods of time where I was like, oh, I'm gonna get buff, and like I gained some weight, and it takes all this effort and time and money and food, and then it disappears after 2 weeks, like it's the false male body type is a massive psyop put on us by advertisers in the last 200 years, I guess. The whole like the whole buff guy being like the big masculine thing, like that's an eating disorder. That's disordered eating.
And it's steroids.
It's big pharma.
Yeah, exactly.
Pharmaceutical junkies, like that's not how we're supposed to look. Like humans are supposed to be lean, Like, so what that you could lift something off the ground? Like, I don't understand it. Well, I'd rather be able to ride a bike 100 miles than lift something off the ground.
That's impressive. Yeah, and I remember going to my doctor when I was young because I've always been rail thin. I have no I have no trouble keeping weight off. I'm that body type. I remember going to the doctor because, as you just said, it was like I was watching wrestling and you saw Hogan and stuff like that. And I went to my doctor and I'm like, geez, I can't gain any weight. I want to look like that. And I remember my doctor this day, he's like, because I said, oh, and he's eating vitamins and he's drinking milk and he's getting big like that. And my doctor's like, no, he's more chemical than anything. I don't want to ever look and do an autopsy on the innards of what Hogan and these wrestlers look like. And that big, humongous physique, my doctor, I remember him saying, I was like probably 10 or 11. He's like, that's not a natural look. Like, that's not how most people are meant to look. You're meant to be lean and trim. And I remember that. I still remember him saying that. And it's all these years later, it's like, wow. Like, he was being honest.
These dudes all past 60, too. Like, I want to live past 60 at the latest, Arnold, he's got enough money to get all the adrenochrome he needs to stay young, but most of these other guys don't. They trail off quick, and it's like, it's not like we're walking around and every other guy you see on the street is some Hulk Hogan looking guy. These guys don't last very long, and it's a complete false male body type that has fueled consumerism, like psychopathic consumerism. And it's funny because you look at the products that everyone's being sold, and they're like the lowest quality byproducts, like whey protein, like bleh, that's like a gross byproduct, and they're selling it back to these guys, and it's destroying their guts. Their gut flora gets destroyed by this stuff, and they're just pounding it every day, and it's making them fat, and they're like, why am I not getting buff? And it's like, because you can't look like that without tons of drugs, like all the carnivore diet influencers, Liver King, like Dr. Baker, all these dudes, they're all on testosterone therapy. They're all on steroids to get that way. And so you have this grift, this giant grift going on of multi-level marketing grift of all these people, and no one's actually getting healthy. They might like the carnivore diet thing, like cutting out carbs. Sure, if you were eating terrible to begin with, and you eliminate any, like if you eliminate fat or protein or carbs, sure, you're going to lose some weight. But carbohydrates turn into muscle glycogen, which is muscle energy. And so, yeah, you might have abs, but you can't do anything with those abs. Sure, they're poking out because you've lost some body weight, and you're eating so much protein that your body, your body, when you eat bloody meat, your brain starts releasing chemicals because it thinks that you're in fight or flight. It's going, whoa, man, this guy's fighting and eating animals right now. So we're going to release a certain set of hormones into this person. It's going to make them a little bit more aggressive. It's going to make them, it's going to change your physiology when you eat that stuff. I don't know where I got onto that, but
no, it's interesting actually that they would change the mindset and
then the hormones in the meat you're eating, like that's a mammal, right? That's a female mammal that was depressed, scared, and then killed. And they killed the animal when it was releasing death hormones into the meat, the blood, everything of the animal. And so you're eating a mammal with mammalian hormones, which you're a mammal too, which are very bioavailable. It's in the dairy also. Estrogen, female, dairy cows are pregnant. They're releasing estrogen into the milk. Like these hormones aren't supposed to be in our bodies. They're supposed to be in cows' bodies. And who knows what that is really doing to us ultimately. But I know when I got off meat, I became a lot less aggressive, just personality-wise. Less road raging. That's how I noticed it. I was like, wow, this is a good measure of noticing whether I'm hangry and or being aggressive is how much I road rage in a month, and it completely dropped off after going vegan again.
Well, it makes sense if your body's in that fight or flight mode that you were saying, and then I could understand why that might make you more aggressive. And I just want to let people know, because I am a heavy metal fan, that Ozzy Osbourne, when he was younger, worked in a slaughterhouse, and I've seen him in many interviews talk about how that really was not for him, and it was a horrible experience, and it messed him up. Like it wasn't very good for his mental condition. Where I couldn't imagine, I can't even imagine where I couldn't do it. I just wouldn't be there. But even I
get upset. Like people think, oh, it's just animals, but it's not. There's a human toll. You are passing your karmic debt onto some guy that has to collect it for thousands of people every day. And like these guys, we watch these interviews, and these dudes are just bawling, and they're like gnarly looking guys, and it's like their psyche is it's messed up. And they actually, like I said earlier, it's called PITS, perpetrator induced traumatic syndrome, and it's the exact same PTSD that our military gets when they go off and kill people. It's because they know they're doing something wrong, so it's destroying their brain. Because it's almost like natural selection. They're like, this sentient being, there's something wrong with it. It's killing other sentient beings, so we're going to destroy its brain over time. I mean, that's what it looks like to me. But these guys, it's not just an animal toll. And just going vegetarian isn't enough, because there is death involved in all of it. They're not killing dairy cows. Like, they kill dairy cows. They kill all the boy cows because they don't need them. They only need girls. Like there's every day these cows have to get connected to these machines and separated from their babies and all kinds of stuff. It's terrible. So you're not safe just because you're vegetarian. And even chickens, like people are like, oh, chickens are just whatever. They're like fish. But no, that chicken has to risk its life collecting nutrition all day to make that egg. And if you don't take it, they get to eat that egg the next day and not go risk their life and their labor to go have to find new stuff. So people, I see a lot of people justifying taking eggs too, and it's like, no, you're enslaving that chicken to go work for you. It's literally slavery. And if we're all slavery fighters and anarchists like we say we are, it's really hard to justify, as above, so below. Like if you're enslaving things below you, you might enslave things if you ever have power. Like most people, if given power, I don't know if most truthers that claim to, I have all the answers and I know what's wrong with the world, if they're given power, they'll become just as corrupt just as quickly as any of these other people. We all love patting ourselves on the back because we're truthers, but really, just because we know some stuff or say some stuff online, it doesn't mean anything unless you're out there doing it, making your community better. Like starting, it's it isn't as simple as everyone thinks.
That's what I've learned as well, Jeffrey, is that it's not simple answers, and
No.
especially when you have each person who's so individual, it becomes very overwhelming at when you kind of look at it that way. That's why so much focus on you got to work on yourself, most important, because the numbers become overwhelming, and I think that this information is. I'm hoping people are at least listening, and whether you're a carnivorist or you're a vegan or you're plant-based, not my concern. It's more just the discussion that maybe gets you questioning things. And I wanted to ask you this, though, and this is something I think about, and I'm sure you've heard all of the stuff I'm going to talk about. You've probably been presented this by many, many people, but I'm really curious for my own sake and for this conversation. I think that everybody has blood on their hands when you think of the carnivores and the meat eaters, whatever you want to call them, and then even vegans. And what I wanted to ask you, and I hope I word this right.
I think I already know what you're going to ask.
Well, that it makes sense. I'm sure you do, but I am curious because we're talking about morality. And
so we're talking about like crop deaths and stuff like that.
No. What I'm wondering is when you're doing factory farming to grow, soy, whatever it is, whatever vegetables, and you're doing it on a factory level, they're plowing fields and they're
crop deaths, yeah,
and okay, if that's what it's called. Sorry, I don't know the terms. And you're killing mice and you're killing
correct.
birds and stuff like that. I'm just wondering, like, what I question myself, and I don't question. I think I'm like, okay, so this comes into, God, how do I word this? Like, you look at the life of, say, a cow or a deer, and then you say, okay. And then you look at like a mouse or a worm, and you're like, okay, like, it should be across the board. Like, what does one have more value than the other? Yes.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'm wording that right.
Different sentience for smaller animals and bigger animals.
Yes, and they all matter. Yeah. So how as a vegan, I'm just curious how this kind of. I think you would say we all have blood on our hands, but
veganism is about stopping the intentional death of animals. Like you said, everyone has just existing. Everyone has non-intentional. What's the other word? Incidental. Okay, so incidental deaths. We all have incidental deaths on our hands. Just existing, driving cars, like you said, in the plant industry. There is a certain amount of crop deaths that happen for vegans. So this goes back to, remember when I was saying we feed billions of calories to cows to get millions of calories out. Cows eat more plants than vegans do, than humans do. They eat 80% of the soy, so the animal ag industry and getting the plant food for the cows is way, like the whole argument for the crop death argument is a vegan argument. We have the least amount of incidental deaths on our hands compared to the animal ag industry, which is intentional deaths. You're intentionally killing animals. Vegans don't intentionally kill animals. They incidentally do through the carnist farming practices that exist. If vegans were the farmers these days, there would be very little crop deaths going on. But most of the crop deaths are from irresponsible carnist farming practices. So there's, like the argument for crop deaths is definitely a vegan argument because we don't eat all the plants. The cows eat all the plants. We eat the least amount of plants as vegans because every meat eater eats all those plants through a cow. You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So
I totally understand.
Allie's going to throw something too.
Yeah, go ahead, Allie. You step in anytime you like.
Just so Jeffrey and I have done like debates on this. So I'm like I really get into the data. So they've done some studies on it. So like if looking at even just current farming practices if, let's say, the whole world went vegan, or just comparing the plant agriculture industry to the animal agriculture industry. They've run the numbers on, like what Jeffrey was saying, crop deaths, incidental deaths due to plant agriculture. The numbers are still much higher than vegans would like, obviously, but they're still lower overall compared to the animal ag industry. Yeah. So let's say if the world were to go plant-based, let's say, and we'd have to adjust our production of food, there would still be overall less animal deaths in a plant ag world. That's with the current, as Jeffrey says, carnist farming practices. That's with people who are running agriculture, who are just obviously not animal lovers like us, who are not vegans, who, you know, employ measures of protecting their crops that kill animals and hurt the environment. That being said, the potential for a vegan or plant-based world, for types of agriculture that can produce numbers to sustain populations, there is a potential for lowering the numbers, the incidental deaths of plant agriculture. There is a potential there, absolutely, and still produce enough plants to feed the current population growth. So yeah, I just wanted to weigh in because there's kind of two sides. There's the moral, philosophical argument and our intentions, and looking at the data that we do have, it still is less, because that is an argument that, like we said, the crop death thing, it comes up a lot in a lot of like this, I will say, anti-vegan social media stuff. That idea like, oh, there's no such thing as a vegan because, you know, you drive down the street, there's bugs that hit your window, you eat plants, they're going to have to kill some animals to grow those plants. Yes, of course, you know, by anyone being alive, by anything existing, there's accidents that happen, there's incidental, things. But yeah, just wanted to chime in there.
No, that makes sense. And now that as you're explaining that, I kind of think of the factory farming, and then that would lead me to that there's better ways to do farming. When I think about how I do my farming, I'm not causing hardly any harm to. I have critters all over my backyard, so I mean it's a symbiote relationship.
You should be healthy. Yeah, you can set up your farm to actually help the local animals.
Exactly. I have tons. Yeah. I have rabbits and everything.
We have all kinds of animals, and we leave out water, and we have a camera
so
on
do
it.
I.
We see foxes and coyotes and all kinds of stuff all kinds of stuff comes through here. And so, you know, like, and they've done studies. They did a study in Chile where they noticed that when they tilled, they were displaced. They literally went through an acreage and counted the animals.
Oh, the mice.
The mice, they displaced mice, but then the mice came in and actually flourished because they had more cover and a food source. So, like, this idea that there's just, you know, it's only harm when you do a crop, and then you don't have to till to do crops. You don't have to kill birds or kill the animals that are around. You know, we get this argument all the time. Oh, they have to kill all the birds in the area if they want to grow. It's just not true. And especially these days, they have, you know, like farmers have these laser machines that shoots little laser beams at the birds and it scares them off. You know, like there are other, the potential to do better is there, but no one's doing it. And instead we have this regenerative farming BS, which is like, okay, so the cows destroyed the field. Let's go put more cows on the field because that's going to fix it. It's an absolute inverted way of fixing things.
It's rancher propaganda, essentially. Yeah. And also it's tied in with the subsidies because again, the ranchers are using, was it either BLM, public lands, or they're very federal much, lands. Federal lands. They're very much having to be in bed with the government in order to exist. And so also there's that marketing aspect too of the regenerative farming, using the cows pooping on the ground, making it the area better off than it was before. But yeah, we can go deep on that.
It's ridiculous.
We've dove deep into
composting. There's many ways of getting around and fixing our croplands that have been destroyed by, again, irresponsible carnist farming practices over the years, where they just, all they care about is money, and that is it. They do not care about anything moral. in the least bit. And they want to make it seem like, oh, these farmers, they love their animals and they're doing such a great thing. But really, they're just they're welfare slaves. Basically,
this is kind of yeah, and what I want to kind of get both your thoughts on as well is because we're talking about how they subsidize this meat industry heavily and dairy and I think it's important. I'm just kind of curious on both of your guys' thoughts because I'm sure you've discussed this and thought about it. Is it just profit that they're subsidizing, or do you think that this is, and we're kind of going into a different territory, but I'm really honestly curious to your guys' response.
So,
do you think this is it more than just profits and meat eating? Is it just go deeper? Like maybe I'm getting at, is this like a blood sacrifice? Is this something that's even deeper? What do you think on this? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. For one, so we watched a video on our show of this farmer who quit raising animals and started growing apple trees, seedlings. And in a 1/16th of amount of space, he was able to make 5 times as much money just growing seedlings that he just barely attends to.
Wow.
There's no money left on the table for meat and dairy, therefore the government has to subsidize it. And but so before I answer your actual question, but yeah, I think Allie wants to jump in on that one. No, go.
Oh, I was just going to say, yes, they're essentially they are creating a profit margin that wouldn't organically exist in the market if they weren't there. They would and it also keeps prices low. So I think that lower income people have better access to these foods that ultimately are a slow kill, and it's a pipeline straight to big pharma and to the pharmaceutical industry, and just get kind of lock in that pipeline of the dead, so to speak, the undesirables of society.
And to answer your question, people love saying that vegans are in a cult, but we're not the ones sacrificing animals every day. Like two years ago, we dove into biblical vegetarian veganism, just kind of for fun, and what we were shocked to find a lot of stuff about non-flesh eaters and flesh eaters, and obviously, what's that? Oh, the Bible? Yeah, in the Bible, it was strange how often they would introduce a new character in the Bible and tell you whether they ate flesh or not. But they're so as far as it being a culty weird thing, I absolutely believe there's some sort of dark stuff, dark motives behind carnism. And also it's the psyche. Like if we're killing that, if it's oh yeah, we're just humans, we just kill, we have to kill to live, that all disappears once you stop eating animals. No, we don't have to kill to live, therefore we don't have to kill humans either.
That's a good point. Really, I mean, desensitizing people and allowing the population to accept war and messed up things in the world. And it's in the same way you could argue media and stuff, putting like the Bambi story, even these old Disney movies that we show our children. I know that totally traumatized me as a kid. So it's kind of that maybe more that trauma-based programming and desensitization, perhaps.
MK Ultra.
Oh my God, Bambi! When I was a child, an Old Yeller wrecked me.
Oh gosh, yeah, Old Yeller, yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, I was like, and then I remember saying to my mom too at a young age, I was like, "Why would you let me watch this? Like this just wrecked me."
remember where the red fern grows?
Oh my
God, that was another
one
that I was like, why I was confused why I was reading it in school, because it's just all about death. Dogs killing raccoons over and over again, and then the dog getting killed, the human killing the dog. Like, it's so crazy.
Yikes, yeah.
Dogs
Yeah,
killing dogs, dogs killing raccoons.
that desensitization,
Like it's
yeah,
yeah, it's meat industry propaganda and it's war propaganda
Yeah, I
more
think
than
it all ties
anything.
together.
War propaganda, government
yeah.
stuff,
There-
deep government, deep.
Yeah, it's beyond government, right? Because the influences are outside of government. If we're talking about media and just what drives cultural influence, it's the continuation and perpetuation of the status quo and just how things are. But that just perfectly kind of just keeps the wheel rolling.
yeah. Well, the desensitization is such a big thing I think about, and how, and it's not just what we're speaking about. It's like you said, all social media and things that are going on. Is that people are just becoming so much colder in a lot of ways, and it's scary when you think about what is normal now. I think back to, I think you make it. It sounds funny when you bring up the point about the movie Bambi and Old Yeller and stuff, and how it really wrecks you. But when I think back to that, I mean, that was a big hit as a child seeing that movie. I remember bawling when Bambi's mom got shot. I would probably bawl now if you put that movie on, to be honest. I can't.
Straight
It
up,
just bawl.
yeah.
It's not normal to, you know, do that. And it's just weird how that's so many young kids see that. So I always see this agenda behind it of getting
We've
people used to it, you know?
we've watched videos on our show where it's children right after shooting their first animal hunting,
Oh my God.
and they're horrified. Without it, they're crying, but everyone's having a great time, so they're confused why they're not happy about what they just did, and they involuntarily shake. And another, we watched, oh God, there was another article we read that was about hunters getting PTSD from hunting, and in the comments of this article were like thousands of hunters and telling their stories about how, they don't hunt anymore because they went out and shot a bear and they just couldn't do it anymore.
And this was not a vegan platform or anything. This was a hunting platform. It was like
it was like a guns and ammo article. It wasn't some vegan propaganda. Like
something
it was
like that. But it's just it's puts you in a position to where you even empathize with the hunter because they have to live with that.
Yeah.
I remember being a kid and for like going with my dad and his friend in the desert and like shooting a rabbit for the first time. And I don't think people realize like, as messed up as this is, trigger warning, like when you kill animals, when you hunt, like, yes, you can be a skilled hunter, but even as a skilled hunter, you're not always it's not one shot and then they're dead, right?
Yeah.
Animals get hurt and then they make sounds, and it's really like even if you're a hardened hunter, like it affects you over time, even if you're not feeling it in the moment. And so it's just like, again, reading these hunters' accounts and stories of just like being like, yeah, I don't know if I'm just like soft now, man, but I just can't do it anymore. Like I'll just go fishing or I'll go like cross country skiing or something. And it's like, you know what? Hell yeah, man. Like, that's just like an intuitive thing, and it just points to that not being a healthy thing for humans to do.
And we recognize the sentience in beings as being similar to ours. And that's what we've been learning, over the years, is that we're all the same consciousness. Like these animals are too. We know, we're all looking through the same set of eyes. Like that's why that's why, especially, real animal lovers, they're so conflicted with eating meat, because they're like, shit, I should feel how I feel about my dog. I should care for this cow as much, but I don't, because it's so taken, like you said, you wouldn't be able to do it yourself. You're passing this on to some other guy that's doing
Absolutely.
it. And that's the only reason you do it for the most part.
Yep.
And most people are the same way. They would be vegetarian overnight if they had to kill every animal. And that's how it was back in the old days, back in our ancestor times, Native Americans. It's way easier to plant some stuff or go collect some stuff off trees than it is to go out and fight to the death with an animal. Like we got this article we read that it's a endurance runner, right? This guy that runs we run, like we ride bikes, like 100 miles, This dude
That's
every
awesome.
year goes on a gazelle, and not a gazelle, but like a buffalo hunt, right? By himself with a bow and arrow. And he's been doing it for 15 years, and he hasn't killed one animal.
It was a spear. It's a spear. 'Cause
No,
it's like
he had a
primitive.
bow.
It's a
No,
bow
he had a
and
bow,
arrow.
yeah. So he's not even able, this guy who's superhuman endurance, basically, he's not able to bag a single animal in over a decade. So how, like, it's not easy. People just think, oh, you just go out and hunt and you just kill animals and it's just over with and it's easy. But no, it's not easy to want to get them motivated enough to go out and get in some conflict with some animal that might hurt you. Then you have to go through this fight to the death. Like, it's not as easy as people just blow it off. Like, oh, I'd have no problem doing that. And it's like, no, you wouldn't. You absolutely would.
It's not. I love when I hear people say, like, well, when the world goes to hell in a handbasket, I'm just going to go out in the woods. And I'm like, and then when I hear them talk, I'm like, you've never camped. I could tell by the way they talk. I'm like, you never even went camping the way you're talking.
In the truth movement, everyone just worships this prepping, off-grid, grow your own animals BS, or hunting, this idea, oh, when shit goes down, I'm going to go hunt. So you and a billion other people are going to go out into the sticks and hunt. Wipe all the animals off the face of the earth overnight. That's not sustainable, bro. Like,
it really isn't. And what I learned too, and I think this is something to let people know, and something I found very valuable, was I took a course in my local area one summer for people that forage, and I realize even here in Canada, like, you think, oh, we're not growing like huge amounts of fruit and all that. We grow great apples and grapes, we have it. But when I went out with this person who was so skilled in the wild, like, I could not believe the amount of edible food out there in the woods. It's everywhere.
We live in an area too where there's a lot of stuff, and it's just now we're starting to, the onions are popping up. Like, like, dude, have you ever seen a yucca tree? You probably don't have them up there. So
you don't have them, but I've seen them. Yeah.
They're very edible. They have these flowers on them that just, like, they taste like broccoli. Like, they're amazing. And you could fill your stomach with like half a plant. Like, there's so much stuff out here.
Yep.
And that's like, dude, that's a money printing machine. Like, if you put effort into it, like, you're not, that's a life hack, real life hack, like foraging.
Sure. Yeah, my buddy was like eating, like, he didn't stop eating the whole time we were out there. Like, we were walking through the woods, and he was eating everything. He's like, oh, you can eat this, and you can eat this,
and that's what they used to do back in the day. Like, that's way easier just to walk around and eat than to go kill some animal.
Yeah,
it just makes sense.
Definitely, it makes sense. Yeah, and I'm gonna have to get you on for a part 2, because I did want to get into other things like supplements and all the myths about. Yeah, like we'll save on that. Yeah, we'll save it because we're running out of time. But I want to make sure I give you the last few minutes to let people know about your channel. We kind of spoke about it, and give you the floor for the next couple of minutes, because you do cover a lot of things. I know a lot of people think that you just talk strictly veganism on your channel.
Yeah,
and you call people out and stuff, and I think a lot of people think that's just what your show is, but I've seen you do 6-7 hour shows where you get into a lot about morality and natural law, and shadow work is a big thing you and Ali talk about. Yeah. So let people know about your channel. I'll make sure I put links in the chat, guys, for Jeffrey's channel, so you can go check it out. Let Ali, and then Ali, also your channel. I didn't even know you had a channel, to be honest. Bad on me. So I'm going to have to get Jeffrey to send me the link for your channel. But definitely,
my YouTube is YouTube at Jeffrey Phillips, Jeffrey, or you could just search up VGT Live, and you'll usually see us. Ali does the thumbnails, and they're very eye-catching. And
that's one way to put it.
Yeah, our thumbnails alone are worth a gander, even if you don't watch the show.
Right.
Also, yeah.
And what's yours, Ali? Your YouTube channel again?
Light Occult Revival on YouTube. And yeah, I used to do a show a few years back, when I'm going to try and get that going again on YouTube. But yeah, Light Occult Revival. Thank you.
All right. Oh, very definitely. I'm going to bring this up, and there. Okay, I see it. So I'll make sure I put the link in the chat for you guys to go check that out as well. And I will No problem. Thank you guys for taking the time to come and just talk about some things I think were very
Yeah, man.
important. And I think that this is the thing. These are the questions I think are important to ask yourself and kind of think about in a bigger thing. And for me, I'm an animal lover through and through, so it's not as it's not as tough for me because but I'm still not vegan, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I'm on my trying very hard. It's hard in a lot of
Yeah.
ways because I just don't have the knowledge, and I do know that I don't want to do it the wrong way. So I'm gonna have to ask you for some more advice and stuff. But I'm not a big heavy meat eater, anyways. But I definitely like my milk and stuff. So that's gonna be where I'm gonna have to start figuring out
Yeah.
some different things.
Dairy's a tough one. It's
Oh,
good to start
that's gonna
just
be hard. Yeah.
yeah. Start trying to do it on the weekends and then start trying to do it more than that. You don't have to do it all at once.
Yeah.
It's always going to take a little time.
But luckily with dairy, there's so many options now. There's so many brands and different types, and so you can really find one that you like. Most people, I feel like most people I know in my personal life don't eat dairy, and they're totally still carnist, as we say. But it's just that one. I know people who
Pretty
still
gross.
have that. They have the palate for it. It's not like they're motivated for, philosophically. But yeah, that one's. I encourage you to explore.
Almond and cashew based cheeses and are really good these days, and the ice creams that they have now
Oh yeah.
are absolutely ridiculous. They don't taste any different from any other dairy. The cheeses, there's sour creams, there's all kinds of stuff. But yeah,
So
then
well, there we
you
go.
can make your own stuff too.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys so much. That's the show. We ran it right to the end.